really began to play out. So without further ado, allow me to welcome Sir Kelvin King. Kelvin, it is so good to have you on the podcast. Thank you so much for being here. How are you
Yeah,
today?
thank you so much, Felicia. I'm doing great. I mean, I actually appreciate you inviting me to your podcast. My wife and I, we do admire your work, and we like to see Christians who are committed to help and expand God's glory, and I think that's what you do here. So yeah, it's pretty encouraging.
Yeah, I'm so excited. So I was sharing with your wife a couple months ago. I said, I need to get Kelvin in front of spiritual leadership. And the reason for that is because the way we do things in evangelicalism is whatever our spiritual leadership kind of dictates politically, the people just run with it. And so I was like, as we are teaching the people about politics, about spiritual matters, I'm like, it's so important that we have conservative candidates who exemplify, like really exemplify, because there's lots of people who will see our lexicon, they'll see our message, and then they'll try and steal it, trying to manipulate the people. And I'm like, enough of that. Like, we
Yeah,
cannot continue this.
yeah.
So it's just been so important. So when I found out, when I saw on Twitter that you were running for
hmm
Secretary of State, I said, yes, let's go. I'm so
Yeah.
excited.
Well,
So
I'm definitely going to bring something different to the seat. So.
yeah. So let's start by talking about who you are. Just tell us a little bit about yourself, your upbringing, and then we'll go
Mhm.
from there.
Okay, well, thanks a lot. I'm Kelvin King. I'm born and raised right here in Georgia. I'm a Georgia boy. I was born in 1974. I'll be 52 this year. It was all unplanned and all out of God's order. My mom was only 15. My
Mhm.
dad was 18, and they did marry though. So they tried to do the right thing, and we moved from Macon to Atlanta area, Cobb County, when I was about 8 years old or so, and then from that point on, I think my dad just kind of got caught up in the fast life of Atlanta and drug usage, domestic violence, a lot of things. It was not a spiritual home. It wasn't, obviously it wasn't. Um, and things kind of went off the rails. He ended up, going to prison, and it was just my
Mhm.
mom and my sister and I for the most part. But we had a lot of love and a lot of support.
Yeah.
When you hear stories like this, you always hear about a grandmother stepping in or a grandfather
Yes.
stepping in. Well, that's what happened with me. My grandmother stepped in and she helped with money and food, and I had a relatively normal upbringing. We didn't have a lot of resources, but we had a lot of love.
Yeah.
And I was able to stay focused in school. I was a pretty sharp student. I was part of the gifted program, and graduated high school with honors. And I got an appointment to the Air Force Academy. I was a pretty good football player at the same time, so I played football at the Air Force Academy, and that was just a unique experience. And God really blessed me to be able to do something like that. It changed my life. That's a school that's very hard to get into, and it's a lot of really smart people that go to that school, and very competitive. They're one of the most competitive schools in the country. And I was just thankful to be able to not just get in, but to also finish. And I'm grateful to God for that.
Yeah.
And what else? I guess the biggest part of that part of my life is that I too followed in my parents' footsteps. I fathered a child out of wedlock.
Mm.
In college, I fathered a son, and my story is a little bit different. It was challenging for the most part of his life, but once he moved out of his mother's home and became a young man, our relationship just grew. I mean, it was remarkable how it flourished, and he ended up going into the Air Force like his dad, and I made me proud. And he ended up coming to work for his dad's company. I'll get into that in just a second. I'm a licensed general contractor,
Hmm.
and he's been doing outstanding. And he gave his life to the Lord in 2021 or 2022. It was when I was
Wonderful.
running for U.S. Senate.
Okay.
And I mean, I mean, it's just so fortunate, and God just kind of shows like once you're faithful, like if you act outside of His will, I mean, there is consequences,
Yeah.
but if you repent and you restructure your life and you walk in your way, He's faithful, and that's what He's shown me in my life. I love talking about my story, to be honest with you. I don't
Yeah.
want to bore you, but man, it's so many
No.
God moments. Jeez
Yeah.
Louise.
I
But
love it. Go ahead.
but
Continue.
but now my son, he's married, no children. Well, That's not true. He's married. He's been married for a little over a year, and they just had their first baby last weekend, last
Congrats.
Thursday. So they're doing things the right way. He made me a proud grandfather and made my wife Janelle a proud grandmother, and it's just kind of cool to watch how, with my father and me, we kind of went off the scales a little bit, and then
Mhm,
I adjusted my life.
mhm.
That played a role in my son's life adjusting, and now they're back on the right track. And it's
Yeah.
just, I mean, it's a really cool story of just recovering and faith and that sort of thing. But let me go back a quick moment. After I
Mhm.
graduated at the academy, I went into the real Air Force, and I was a contracting officer. I served for 5 years. I did really well, but like I said, I had a son in Atlanta, and I needed to get back here.
Mm.
So I got out of the military, came back here, and from that point on, I just, I worked in corporate America. I had a lot of success working in corporate America. I won a lot of awards and
Mm.
magazines and that sort of thing. And, I felt kind of good about my professional career, so good that I was like, man, maybe I can start my own business one day.
Nice.
So, so the, so the entrepreneurial bug bit me about 14, 15 years ago.
Hmm.
And I saved up money for a couple years and I ended up starting my own construction company. And I started
Mhm.
it from scratch by myself in a bedroom of my home.
Mm.
And after that first year, I made enough money to move to the basement of my home. And in the
Mhm.
basement, we built it out and I started hiring people and W-2 like real employees.
Okay.
And now I have three offices one office in Kentucky, one office in Tennessee, and one office here in Georgia. I have 30 employees, over 300
Wow.
subcontractors that work for me and that are contracted under my contracts. That allows us to be responsive and service clients all across state of Georgia, and obviously a little bit in Tennessee and a little bit in Kentucky as well.
Yeah.
So that's the summary of my professional background and how I came to be. I During that period of time, I did meet someone that changed my life again. About
Yeah.
8 years ago, 7 years ago, I met a young lady
Mhm.
in politics, and
Okay.
and I can
I just,
I,
by the way, I just love her so much. That's why I'm all giddy, but go ahead.
But I guess I can transition to my whole the politics side because
Okay.
I haven't been in politics my whole life. I actually was raised on the Democrat side, like a lot of black
Mhm.
families. We were
Mhm.
Democrats, and in college, I started learning about like Black history. I mean,
Mhm.
I was driven. I'm sure you went through that phase. I mean, most of us go through the phase where we really want to consume as much as we can
Yeah.
about, our race and our history here in America. And I was doing a lot of that in college. And in fact, I did so much that I started buying into it. I'm like, man, these people are great. But the people I
Yeah.
bought into led me to an opposite party. So the people I
Okay.
bought into were people like Booker T. Washington and Frederick Douglass. I'm like, man, Booker T is the man. Like, I believe in what he says, right?
Yeah.
So I had these, I call them maybe latent Republican qualities or conservative
Okay.
qualities, being uh, under the costume of black culture or whatever you want to call it, but
Yeah.
the inside was really conservative principles because that's what I mean. That's how you make it in America, in my opinion. So in college is when I first voted for a Republican.
Okay.
I voted for, well, right after college, I voted for Bush, but I had voted for Clinton right before, 4 years prior.
Okay.
So that was my transition was right in college, and from that point on, I've been
Right.
only Republican. And as you know, once you become a Republican, a lot of your friends and family they start challenging you and they start questioning,
Mhm.
"Are you sure about this?" And they don't love you over there. They're
Yeah.
racist over there, or whatever terms you want to use. A lot of that hit me, and what happens at that point is that you just kind of step back, you kind of tighten up your belt, and you develop responses, and you do your homework. You make sure that your positions are solid because you don't want to be called out in front of your friends. You don't want to be embarrassed.
Yeah.
So, so I knew what I was
Right.
talking about. Man, I did so much research on my position, so I feel really good now whenever I have conversations with the opposing party. But anyhow, that's a that's kind of a long story of my Republican journey. But in 2016, that is when I actually got a little bit more involved with the Republican Party. I used to just argue with
Okay.
people, but in 2016, I thought that Donald Trump was the only candidate that could beat Hillary Clinton.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
regardless of what people thought about him or her or what have you, at the time I wanted a Republican to win. And I looked at
Hmm.
the field. There were people that I liked in that field. I mean,
Hmm.
lots of people that were good in that field. But frankly, at the time, I just thought that you had to fight Hillary like a man. And I
Mm.
know that sounds really weird, but you got to fight.
Yeah.
And fighting is okay. It's okay. I mean, the Bible talks about how we are supposed to go to war. Look at Deuteronomy. So I mean, it's not a
Yeah.
bad thing to fight. You just have to make sure you're
Yeah.
fighting for the Lord. You know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So so I thought Trump was the only one that could fight and that would fight. So I voted
Hmm.
for him, and from that point on, I've been a really staunch Republican. I don't always agree with Trump's position. Don't get me wrong. I mean,
Right. Right.
but but that's kind of how I turned into the party. And as I became more involved with the party, a buddy of mine was like, "Hey man, you need to meet